The third part of our series on the command post, dealing with mental health for first responders, we want to focus a little more on something that's really hard. It's really challenging. And it has to deal with talking to someone whenever you feel like there may be a problem. And it doesn't take much to look in trade journals and publications about the fire service, of first responders, suicide. I know from just being in that whole arena of suicide, it's hard. It's a hard thing to talk about. It's a hard thing to consider. From being a supervisor, how do you start those conversations whenever you have folks, whether they're your friend, subordinate, or somebody in the service that you know? How do you start those conversations when you're really concerned about them and their well-being?
I'm so glad you asked that. I'm so glad we have this opportunity to discuss it because what we found in all of the research and work that we've done is if you're worried about somebody, one of the only interventions that has been found to help is actually asking them directly. Because when you do that and you do it in a way that they feel safe, you give them the opportunity to open up about something that is weighing so heavy on them. What's so fascinating that we've learned, especially with suicide, is that people who are suicidal are deeply ambivalent. And what that means is they have competing feelings of life and death. The will to live is so strong that no matter how much pain you're in, no matter how much you're thinking about suicide, no matter how much you want it to stop, there's this piece of you that wants to live. There's this piece of you that wants the pain to stop. But for us in this first responder world, the thought of talking about suicide, we don't want anybody to think if we're there that we're there, because they're going to label us, they're going to pull us offline, they're going to talk about us. It's humiliating, it's scary. So we bottle it up and we hide it. But deep down inside, there's this piece that wants help, doesn't want to feel alone. So what we've learned is if you are worried about somebody, first of all, the most important thing that you can do is, ahead of being worried about them, ahead of being in crisis, have relationships. Right. Company officers need to have relationships with their people. Their people need to know that when they're hurting or when they're stressed, that they can talk to their company officer. That relationship has to be established. That trust has to be established early. But when it gets to that point where that person maybe made a comment that, they wish it would all end, or maybe made a comment that they're overwhelmed and they feel like a burden and maybe other people would be better off without them, and you're worried about them, that's the time to come to them and let them know, first of all, what you've noticed. I've noticed over the last several weeks, you've had these changes. I've noticed that you've said these things. I'm worried about you and I care for you. Don't corner them. Don't force them into the conversation. First of all, even before telling what you've noticed, ask permission to talk to them. Get a quiet, private place. Then start it off with what you've noticed. Let them know what you've noticed. Let them know that you care about them and give them an opportunity to talk. You don't have to jump right into, are you thinking about suicide? Just start it off with what you've noticed. Let them know that you care about them and that you want to be that person that they can talk to, and give them a chance to start the conversation, hopefully, and unburden themselves and share what they're experiencing.
Good. That's good information to know. So I know there's a video that the peer support folks have put out online. It's a YouTube video, and I think there was somebody here that looks very familiar that's in that video. Talk a little bit about the interactions, and I know from a supervisor perspective is one thing, but being a buddy or a pal or a friend of someone that you work with, or maybe it's someone you just noticed in the firehouse that might not be assigned to your truck or your engine, but they're a part of your crew. That interaction and ability to connect with that person. Dylan, how does that work?
So just like Dina said earlier, it's establishing those relationships in the firehouse and being there as a friend. Once you have that established, you feel comfortable enough to approach somebody. And like Dina said, approach that person and say, hey, I've noticed that you've been a little off lately. I've noticed that you haven't hung out with us on our days off. I've noticed that, maybe something's going on, and give them the opportunity to open up.
My takeaway from this is that it is a critical conversation to have. And yes, if you're the one trying to start this conversation with someone, there probably is a right to be nervous and to be anxious about having that conversation. But the worst thing we could do is to not have that conversation.
Right. And there's really just 3 rules with it. First thing is, if somebody admits that yes, they are thinking about suicide, the most important thing you can do is show that person gratitude, because they have entrusted something that is very sacred and very scary to you, and that shows that level of trust. So you want to let them know how much you appreciate that, because that's a gift for them to tell you that. That's a gift to you, and speaks a lot to who you are to them. Second thing, like Dylan said, do not hot potato. Do not say, time out, this is out of my realm, this is beyond my scope, I got to call somebody, because you've broken every bit of trust, and they're going to shut down. And the third piece is the most important piece. It's just at this point to remember that now there's a partnership. They've entrusted something, and you let them know, wow, I can't imagine how difficult this is, but I'm so grateful that you open up to me. I'm here for you, and I'm going to try to help you find resources. And from that point forward, just look at it as a partnership to getting them to resources. It's not your job to fix them.
Right.
It's not your job to be the final spot. It's not your job to, lock them up. The next step is just to find resources. And those resources can be reaching out to us. It can be knowing the resources in your area, but all the way through, make sure they know it's a partnership and that they're involved. Do you mind if I reach out to North Carolina Peer Support for guidance, so that maybe we can start to help you get through these, difficult times or difficult thoughts? Because a lot of times, whatever it is that brought them there, it's something that we could start to work on. It might be a divorce. It might be a major loss. It could be a job loss. There's generally something that we could start working on.
Good deal. Well, thank you to both so much for spending time with us and sharing some of your experiences and some of the research and information. Again, the website is available. We'll put it online for everybody that's watching these videos to see, and the number on the website is there for everyone. Encourage folks, if they have any questions or any concerns, or if they need to use some of the services, please take the opportunity to do that. Thank you so much for being a part of the North Carolina Association of Fire Chiefs Command Zone series.
It's been an honor. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.